President Obama has decided to crack down on carbon emissions in what's being described as the boldest move done yet by any president on climate change. That would mean something, except it doesn't really mean anything because I don't think there's been any action done by any president on climate change yet. Maybe a little bit by Obama already, but he's surpassing his own benchmark. And again, to be clear, he's cracking down, yes, and it certainly is a step in the right direction, yes, but it's also not nearly enough. Let's just keep that in perspective as I give you the facts on this. Quote, the Environmental Protection Agency released its proposed rule to limit the amount of carbon pollution that existing power plants can dump into the atmosphere. The Clean Air Act, passed by Congress in 1970 and amended in 1990, is finally getting to tackle carbon pollution from the nation's 491 smoke-spewing coal power plants. It does not mean that the EPA will be directly shutting down coal plants. Each state would have a broad menu of carbon-cutting options, including energy efficiency improvements, adding clean energy sources, implementing a carbon tax, or instituting or joining a cap-and-trade system. So, in other words, there's a variety of different ways that the states themselves are going to pick to fall in line with this overall reduction plan. And actually, according to the White House, I think there's 50 different ways you can achieve the level of carbon cutting that they're asking for. So they're being as kind as they possibly can to industry, which is no surprise for President Obama, because as we've described many times over on the show, he's really a center-right kind of guy. You know, he's certainly not this hardcore liberal that the Republicans paint him to be. I wish he was. So he's giving them a variety of options to achieve the goal. Quote, by 2020, states will have to drop their carbon emissions from existing power plants 25% from the 2005 levels, and the reason they did that is because that's when some calculations were done with the United Nations and the IPCC, so they're going by that level. So they need to cut it 25% from 2005 levels. By 2030, according to the proposed rule, those emissions will have to drop another 5% to a total of 30% from the same base 2005 level. So, how significant is this move? Well, it amounts to roughly 300 million tons of annual CO2 reduction. Yet again, I can't stress this enough, definitely a step in the right direction. It also cuts pollution, soot, and smog, which will result in avoiding, quote, 6,600 premature deaths. So that's huge, and that's an aspect that unfortunately none of the mainstream outlets have really covered in detail. But that's a stunning number, man. Saving 6,600 premature deaths. It cuts 150,000 asthma attacks in children when they're living in these high-pollution areas. And it cuts pollutants like nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, mercury, and sulfur dioxide. So this has like a wide-ranging effect beyond just, trying to limit climate change and limit the carbon itself. It also, is going to help with healthcare costs, for example, because not as many people are going to get sick from the air. By 2030, the rule will also yield, quote, net climate and health benefits of $48 billion to $82 billion. So think about that. Just a minor step in the right direction to try to cut back on pollution and try to limit climate change saves $48 to $82 billion by 2030. That's amazing. So there's an argument to be had about this plan simply from a fiscal conservative perspective. So that's one reason why conservatives should definitely be on board with this. And it's also important to note that, quote, it will not be finalized until next year, after which the states would have a year to draft and submit their plans on how they will achieve their emissions reductions. So again, it gives them a menu of options to achieve this overall 30% reduction. Like I said, it's definitely a step in the right direction. I definitely give Obama and the EPA credit for this, but we do need to keep in mind, and it's very important to keep things in perspective and remember that we're going to need to go further eventually. Whether we try to go further now and you propose additional ideas on top of this, or we wait, well, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years max? We're going to need to do more because guess what? Climate change isn't going to wait for anybody. We already passed some dangerous thresholds and we're quickly approaching even more dangerous thresholds. So they're not going to wait for us. So we need to get to work and we need to do the right thing, at least in the United States of America. Of course, the counter argument from the silly people on the right is, well, India and China are going to pollute anyway, so I guess we should also pollute. How stupid is that? That's like saying, oh yeah, well my best friend and some family members decided to do some robbery and do some burglary, so I guess we need to do robbery and burglary too. Yeah, just because they're fucking up doesn't mean we also need to fuck up, okay? We could actually set an example and try to lead here, and like I keep mentioning, man, this opens up the window of opportunity for renewable energy, for green technology, which is the next internet boom, believe you me, because we can't rely on fossil fuels forever. We're going to need to have wind energy, solar energy, geothermal, thorium, nuclear, all these different things, man. They're very important, and this is the future. So the quicker we move down that path, the quicker all the innovation for these things will come from the U.S., which means we make all the money off of it. So there's another, reason to be in favor of this from a conservative perspective and from a business perspective. So again, definitely a step in the right direction. We need to do more, but I applaud this either way.